Well, thank you very much, Kat, and can I also pay my respects to the owners past and present and future of the land. I'm going to pick up from where Alison left off, conveniently talking about the rule of law, and just raise some features of this case which make it highly unusual in relation to the law of extradition. The first point to make, though, is that when it comes to extradition, the law is always fluid. Extradition relies on goodwill between countries, it relies on treaties which are signed between countries, and it relies on judicial officers exercising their discretion appropriately to ensure that extradition is not used for political purposes or purposes which do not relate to the rule of law. Easier said than done, one might say, and certainly this case is a real test for the British justice system. Having said that, there are features of the British justice system which are commendable, one of which is the UK Supreme Court, which is of course the replacement for the House of Lords, and which Boris Johnson now wants to abolish because they dared to rule against him in relation to Brexit. But the UK Supreme Court, if this case were to get there, in my view, would not look kindly on extradition. But to get there, of course, will take a number of years, and we don't have that sort of time. Assange doesn't have that sort of time, and nor does his family. The difficulty with this extradition is threefold. The first is, and I think the most revealing aspect and most troubling aspect, is that this is the first time that a nation, let alone the United States, has sought to use the principle of extraterritoriality to drag within its reach, its jurisdictional reach, any person who has not been a citizen of that country, not set foot in that country, but simply published material or done something in relation to that country. Normally, in order to prosecute a case, there has to be some link to the jurisdiction beyond simply the fact that there was publication of material. The Assange case is very troubling because it is the first time in which the United States has sought to use extraterritorial reach, which every country has. I mean, to give you a very bland example, for example, health and safety laws at the federal level apply to Australian embassies overseas or Australian workplaces overseas. That we understand as extraterritorial reach. We don't understand extraterritorial reach to mean, I don't like what you've said and what you've written, so therefore I'm going to seek to extradite you to my jurisdiction and have you dealt with. It's troubling, of course, for a lot of journalists, and rightly so, and we've seen some of the more principled members of the media in this country, Tony Walker, for example, from The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, and to a much lesser extent in a sort of contorted way, Peter Grester, most recently yesterday. But there is now increasing recognition amongst journalists in this country about the danger of the precedent that is set by this particular case. Other jurisdictions, of course, will look on. Other jurisdictions such as China and India and any other emerging powers or great powers, countries with clout around the world, will look on at what the United States has done in the way it's seeking to extend the law relating to extradition into areas where it ought not to be. The second point, of course, is that if Assange went to the United States, he would not get a fair trial. He would not. This is of course easily said. A lot of my clients say they don't get a fair trial. Sometimes they're right, but generally speaking, the processes work. Generally speaking, this is not one of those cases because there is an insistence by the United States that this matter will be heard in the District of Eastern Virginia, where the jurors are drawn from the families of and partners of and sons and daughters of and in fact members of the security establishment, including the Defence Forces. It has an over 90% conviction rate in relation to these types of offences. That's not a normal conviction rate. That's the sort of conviction rate you get in the Northern Territory in relation to Aboriginal Australians, and we rightly say it's wrong. But that's what happens in that particular jurisdiction. The third point is that he will be given an effective death penalty. Before coming here tonight, I pre-recorded an interview for Andrew Bolt's program. These are the things that you do these days. But anyway, look, to be fair to him, he was not unsympathetic and he didn't push back all that hard. But he said, he wouldn't get 175 years, 170 years. I made the point to Bolt that, of course, these sorts of sentences are routine in the United States. Bernie Madoff, I think, got a sentence in that range. People get sentences of 200 to 300 years. This is what is called an effective death penalty. And the United Kingdom has as a general principle, as does Australia, we will not extradite people to countries where there is a death penalty, as we know in relation to the Bali Nine, sometimes more honoured in the breach. But this would be an effective death penalty. If he doesn't get 170 years, he'll certainly get something which sees him living the rest of his life, the extent one can use the word living, in American penal institutions. And they will be American penal institutions which are rigorous and beyond rigorous. They are cruel places. He won't be going to one of the easier prisons that white-collar criminals in the United States end up in. The last point I just want to make is this, and that is there is a scenario available here which is not beyond the realms of possibility, in fact is a real possibility, and that is this. If the United Kingdom government, which has at the end of the day the say in extradition, if it decides that it's not going to extradite Assange, he is an Australian citizen who has overstayed his visa. In a normal course of events, he would have been put on a plane and he will land in Perth. Where I understand that's where overstayers from the UK generally land. The United States, of course, can keep seeking to extradite him from any country in the world it chooses to. This could become, in a very realistic sense, a matter for the Australian government. And I don't think many Australians understand that particular scenario. Certainly, and we've been very grateful, and I should say extremely grateful to Bob Carr and to Margot from his office for their great assistance in recent times on this campaign. But I know Bob understands it, and there are people increasingly in Canberra to whom I speak who understand it and get a shiver down the spine, because the last thing this government wants is Assange landing on the doorstep, having to deal with the Americans seeking to extradite from this country. Would he be extradited from this country? The extradition treaty from this country is less secure in terms of his chances than the United Kingdom, which of course has the political carve-out. So there are finally, there are seriously troubling issues for Australia here, a country which purports to uphold the rule of law. They are the sort of issues that you get in developing world countries and where we intervene very heavily on behalf of citizens. That's what needs to happen here. Thank you.